You ever notice how the night gets louder when a deadline creeps up behind you? It's funny. People hear the ticking clock, but they pretend it's just background noise. They scroll, they sigh, they say, "I'll get serious later." But tonight, tonight is different, because there's a whisper slipping through the cracks of this moment, calling your name with a weight you can feel on your bones. A whisper that says before 11:50 p.m. something is shifting, something is tightening its grip around your fate, urging you, pushing you, daring you to open your eyes before the hour runs out. You ever notice how a clock can look completely harmless until someone tells you to pay attention to it? Suddenly those little ticking sounds feel louder, sharper, almost like they're whispering your name with every second that slips away. That's what happens when life gives you a time limit. It's not the time that scares you. It's the way it exposes you. Because the moment someone says asterisk before 11:50 p.m. asterisk, your mind starts running, tripping, stumbling over itself, wondering why the time matters, why asterisk asterisk you asterisk asterisk matter, why this moment has suddenly been pulled into the spotlight. And that's the funny thing, isn't it? You weren't worried about the clock until it started looking back at you, until it felt like it wasn't counting hours, it was counting your hesitation. Hesitation is such a beautiful little monster. It doesn't roar. It doesn't chase. It just sits in the corner of your head, tapping its fingers, waiting for you to second-guess yourself. And every time you do, it smiles that quiet little smile, the kind that tells you it's won again. But when a moment comes with urgency attached, hesitation starts to panic. Because urgency doesn't wait. Urgency doesn't negotiate. Urgency doesn't gently knock on your door and ask if you're free. No. Urgency kicks the door open, turns on all the lights, and says, asterisk, up, now, asterisk, and. Suddenly, hesitation doesn't feel so powerful anymore. Suddenly, the thing you've been ignoring, avoiding, burying under excuses, it crawls right to the surface. People like to pretend that time is just numbers on a screen. But time is pressure dressed up as seconds. Time is a mirror that shows you exactly how long you've been running from yourself. And when someone tells you there's a moment coming, a message you need to see before the hands hit 11:50, that pressure tightens. It tightens in all the right ways. Not to break you, but to expose you. To show you that deep down, you know you're not doing what you could. You know you've been drifting, delaying, telling yourself later as if later is guaranteed. But deadlines have a way of cutting through your little illusions, don't they? And there's something else, something people don't like to admit. When you hear a specific time, it feels personal. It feels aimed. Like someone reached into the noise of your life, found your name, and said, asterisk, this one's for you, asterisk. And that's when your heartbeat changes. That's when your breathing shifts. Because suddenly it feels like you're being watched, guided, pushed towards something you've been too scared to face. It's not the clock that's chasing you. It's the truth you've been dodging. You ever notice how your mind wakes up when it thinks it's running out of time? Decisions you've delayed for months, suddenly they matter. Fears you've been hiding, suddenly they get loud. Dreams you've shelved, suddenly they start knocking from the inside. Because urgency wakes the parts of you that comfort kept asleep. Comfort whispers, stay where you are. Urgency snarls, move. And you can pretend you don't hear it. You can pretend it's nothing. You can pretend the ticking means absolutely zero. But deep down you feel it. You feel that nudge, that pull, that strange little spark that makes you sit up a little straighter. And that's what this moment is really about. Not the time, not the number, not the clock creeping toward midnight. It's about what the urgency awakens in you. It's about the hesitation it exposes, the truth it drags out of the shadows. Because if the clock wasn't pointed at you, you wouldn't feel this uneasy little shiver down your spine. You wouldn't feel this sense that something is aligning, shifting, preparing to collide with your life in a way you can't ignore. The clock isn't counting time. It's counting your hesitation. It's counting how long you've avoided the calling that's been tugging at your ribs. It's counting the seconds before you finally stop pretending you don't feel it. You know what's funny? People spend their whole lives chasing comfort like it's some kind of treasure chest buried under their pillow. Soft routines, soft excuses, soft little lies they tell themselves just to get through another day without changing anything. Comfort is cozy, predictable, warm, like a blanket wrapped a little too tightly around your throat. It keeps you calm while it slowly takes away every reason you had to rise. And the best part? You don't even notice it happening. You call it peace. You call it stability. But really, it's just you trading your fire for a lukewarm existence. But urgency, oh, urgency is nothing like that. Urgency kicks the door open in the middle of the night. Urgency cracks its knuckles and laughs in your face. Urgency doesn't care about how tired you are, or what's on your schedule, or how long you've been meaning to start. Urgency is rude, impatient, uncomfortable, and that's why you fear it. Not because it's dangerous, but because it exposes everything that comfort has been hiding from you. You ever notice how urgency makes you feel alive in ways comfort never could? One sharp moment of pressure, and suddenly your eyes widen, your heart thumps a little too hard, and you start seeing things you've ignored for months. Your excuses sound stupid, your delays look embarrassing, your fears shrink into little shadows, because urgency doesn't whisper, it screams. It drags truth into the light whether you're ready or not. And that's the thing about this moment. It's not coming gently. It's not wrapped in velvet. It's not arriving with soft music and warm lighting. No, it's coming with a spotlight, with a siren, with a cold wind that hits your spine and makes you stand up straight. Because this moment isn't for your comfort, it's for your awakening. You've been sleeping behind your own eyes for too long, drifting through days like a ghost, pretending you're waiting for the right time. But when urgency steps in, the whole idea of a right time gets tossed out the window. Pressure has this incredible way of revealing what's already broken, not to break you more, but to show you exactly where you need to strengthen. You've been acting like you're made of glass, tiptoeing around your own potential. But urgency laughs at your glass. It taps on it, knocks on it, pushes against it until you either shatter or transform. And that's why this moment feels different, because comfort didn't warn you about what's coming. But urgency doesn't hide the truth. It exposes it. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange tightening in your chest, that restless energy in your hands, that quiet suspicion that something is shifting in your life. Not something small, not something subtle, something big, something that won't wait for your approval. And comfort keeps telling you, relax, you're fine. But urgency nudges you and says, look again. And when you do, you see the cracks in the walls you built, the cracks in your logic, the cracks in the story you've been repeating to justify staying exactly where you are. Life never sends urgency without a problem. Reason. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder unless it's trying to pull you towards something you're not prepared for but absolutely capable of. Comfort blocks that message. Urgency delivers it with a slap. And that slap, that jolt, that spark that shoots through your nerves when you realize time is running out, that is the truth rising to the surface. You ever wonder why the most important moments in your life always seem to show up at the worst possible times? It's because comfort will never let you grow willingly. You'll never wake up one morning and say, "Today's a great day to face everything I've avoided for years." No, life has to corner you, pressure has to build. Urgency has to bite into your nerves just enough to make you move. Because without that tension, without that heat, you'd settle for the same small version of yourself forever. But urgency, oh, urgency is the great revealer. It shows you your strength, your hunger, your fear, your truth. And the truth is simple. The moment you're being pulled toward right now, it's not here to comfort you. It's here to uncover you. It's here to strip away the illusions you've wrapped around yourself like safety nets. Because urgency reveals what comfort has been hiding from you, and what it's been hiding is the real you clawing to get out. You ever notice how the biggest warnings in life never show up with flashing lights or blaring alarms? No, that would be too easy, too obvious. Life likes to play a different game, a quieter one. It whispers, it nudges, it gives you little signs, little moments, little shifts in the air that make your instincts twitch. But you shrug them off because they don't look dramatic enough. You wait for thunder, but life gives you a tiny tap on the shoulder. And that tap, that whisper, that subtle message, that's the real danger. Because when a message comes softly, gently, quietly, you don't treat it seriously. And that's exactly how people end up blindsided, broken, wondering how they never saw the storm coming. Life always whispers before it screams. That's the rule nobody talks about. It sends you hints that something is coming, a change, a push, a challenge, a breakthrough, a collision with your own destiny. But because it doesn't feel explosive enough, you slide right past it. You convince yourself it's nothing, just a feeling, just a thought, just a coincidence. But inside, deep inside, where the truth sits like a coiled animal, you know something is shifting. You feel the tension in your ribs. You feel that strange awareness in your bones. You feel the pull, and yet you ignore it, because the whisper didn't scare you enough. But whispers aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to warn you, to prepare you, to give you a chance to act before the real weight drops. Life is generous like that. It gives you a soft version of the truth before it hands you the hard one. But people have this wonderful talent for ignoring the quiet moments that matter the most. They think if it were important, it would be louder. Oh, but that's the trick. By the time it gets loud, it's already too late. You know what makes the whisper so dangerous? It's polite. It doesn't force you. It invites you. It gives you a choice. It says, look closer. And your fear says, maybe later. And you choose later every single time. Later becomes a habit. Later becomes a lifestyle. Later becomes your slow motion downfall. Until one day the whisper stops being a whisper. It sharpens. It grows teeth. It becomes a scream that shakes the floor under your feet. And then you wonder how you missed the signs. How you didn't notice the shift in the atmosphere. How you didn't recognize the opportunity or the danger or the blessing staring you right in the face. But you did notice. You just didn't respect it. You waited for something louder, something unmistakable, something dramatic enough to force your hand. But that's not how life works. It waits. It watches. It gives you a chance to respond to the subtle warning before it hands you the consequences of ignoring it. There's something unsettling about a whisper, something unsettling because it feels personal, targeted, like it's meant specifically for you. And that's exactly why you run from it, because if you acknowledge it, You have to acknowledge that your life is nudging you forward, that something is calling you to wake up, to move, to make a choice you've been putting off. A whisper asks for your courage. A scream demands it. That's why the whisper matters more. And when destiny has something to tell you, it rarely comes shouting at first. Oh no. It tiptoes. It leans in close. It brushes against your awareness. It tests you. It wants to see if you're paying attention, if you're awake, if you care enough about your own future to listen before the world has, to shake you by the shoulders. People always say they want signs, they want guidance, they want a message that's crystal clear. But when the sign comes quietly in the form of intuition, discomfort, a gut feeling, a strange coincidence, a sudden spark of thought, they pretend it doesn't count. They act blind. They act busy. They act unready. But destiny doesn't care about your excuses. If you won't listen to the whisper, it will send the scream. And the scream, oh, the scream is never gentle. That's the pattern. First the whisper, then the push, then the shove. And if you still don't move, then comes the moment that breaks your illusion of control. The moment that rearranges your world without your permission. The moment you realize the whisper was the gift and the scream was the consequence. Life whispers before it screams. And right now, whether you admit it or not, you hear something calling you, something stirring, something shifting the air around you, like a warning wrapped in velvet. And you can pretend it's nothing. You can pretend you're imagining it, but the whisper always comes for a reason. And if you ignore it, well, you already know what happens when it turns into something louder. You ever notice how hesitation has this strange way of dressing itself up like safety? Like it whispers in your ear, wait, think, hold on, maybe later, and you actually believe it's protecting you. But hesitation isn't a shield. It's a trap wearing a polite smile. It stands between you and everything you were meant to touch, everything you were meant to become. It's the quiet assassin of every dream you've ever had. And the funniest part? It doesn't even have to kill the dream outright. It just delays you long enough that regret does the rest. When your name is spoken, when life, fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, points at you and says asterisk, you, right now, asterisk. Hesitation is the first thing that panics. It knows it's about to lose control. Because when a calling appears, you feel it. You feel that spark, that pulse, that shift in your heartbeat. Something inside you sits up straight, wide awake, whispering asterisk, this is for me. Asterisk, and hesitation hates that. It rushes in, throwing excuses like confetti, you're not ready, you're not worthy, you're not strong enough, you're not prepared. Oh, hesitation is very dramatic when it feels threatened. But here's the thing. A calling doesn't wait for your readiness. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder when everything is convenient. It shows up when you're messy, confused, scared, unbalanced, and halfway convinced your life is a joke. Because callings aren't about who you are in the moment, they're about who you're capable of becoming the moment you stop hesitating. And that's why hesitation is dangerous. It takes that spark meant to light your path and convinces you to hide it under your doubt until it burns out. You know what hesitation really is? It's the doorway to regret. Every time you pause when you should move, every time you stall when you should step forward, you stand at that doorway and stare at a future you might never get to meet. And regret is merciless. It waits for you at the end of every maybe tomorrow, every not yet, every what if I fail. It grows in the spaces hesitation creates. It feeds on the moments you let slip away. And by the time you realize what you lost, it's already too late to grab it back. There's a certain cruelty in hesitation. Not loud cruelty, quiet cruelty. The kind that sneaks up on you over years, not seconds. It convinces you that delaying is harmless, that waiting is wise, that thinking twice is responsible. And meanwhile, life is moving, shifting, opening doors that won't stay open forever. Opportunities don't orbit you endlessly like loyal planets. They swing by, fast, sharp, brief, and hesitation keeps your feet glued to the ground while the moment races past. And when a moment is truly meant for you, when it has your name carved into its bones, it doesn't feel like any ordinary moment. There's pressure in the air, electricity beneath your skin, a weird sense that the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's life placing a key in your hand and watching to see if you'll freeze or turn it. And hesitation. Hesitation is the voice that tells you not to move, not to try, not to risk anything at all. But here's the truth most people choke on. The moment you hesitate, the moment you look over your shoulder instead of forward, the moment you let fear take the wheel, that moment starts the slow death of your own potential. You lose the rhythm, you lose the momentum, you lose the fire that was just beginning to rise. Because hesitation doesn't just slow you down, it cuts you off from the version of yourself that was ready to leap. You ever feel that ache in your chest after you walk away from something you knew was meant for you? That heavy, hollow feeling like you just stepped out of your own destiny. That ache is the cost of hesitation. It's the echo of a road you were supposed to take, and it stays with you. It sits in your memory like a bruise you keep pressing to see if it still hurts. And when that kind of moment comes, a moment that calls your name with unmistakable force, hesitation should be the first thing you silence. Because your calling won't argue with your excuses. It won't wrestle with your fears. It won't wait for you to stop doubting yourself. It'll simply move on to someone else bold enough to step forward. Your hesitation is the exact doorway regret walks through. Every time you freeze, regret takes another step closer, and once it reaches you, it never leaves. You ever notice how people treat warning signs like background noise? They see them, they feel them, they sense them, but they pretend the signs aren't really there. Because acknowledging a warning means acknowledging the responsibility to act, and that scares them more than the danger itself. So they look straight at the red flag, blink twice, shrug, and say, "Nah, I'm imagining it," as if pretending blindness somehow changes the truth. As if closing your eyes makes the fire on the stove go away. Humans are funny like that. They think ignoring a problem protects them from it. But all it really does is give the problem time to grow teeth. Warning signs don't disappear just because you pretend not to see them. They simply get louder, sharper, hungrier. And every time you ignore one, you give life permission to raise the stakes. That's the part nobody likes to admit, that the first warning is always the gentlest. The first sign is always the smallest, softest, most merciful. A quiet shift in your gut, a tiny thought that doesn't feel normal, a pattern repeating itself one too many times, a strange tension in the air that makes the hairs on your arm stand up. That's the whisper stage. The stage where life gives you a chance to catch the truth before it becomes a threat. But you, being human, you brush it off. You laugh it away. You drown it in distraction. Because facing it would mean facing yourself, and that's not something most people do willingly. So the sign shows up again, louder this time. Maybe it's a problem you thought you'd solved creeping back in. Maybe it's a person showing you the same wound they've always shown. Maybe it's an opportunity slipping just a little further from your grasp. The signs keep stacking no matter how many times you pretend they're invisible. And that's when it starts to sting, not because the signs changed, but because you've run out of excuses that make ignoring them feel clever instead of cowardly. You ever notice how life escalates when you don't listen? First it knocks gently, then it taps harder, then it pounds, then it breaks the door. And by the time it breaks the door, it's not asking you to notice anymore. It's forcing you to deal with everything you tried to avoid. Warning signs aren't punishments. They're mercy. They're life handing you the truth in small pieces so you don't have to choke on it all at once. But when you ignore those pieces, life stops slicing and starts throwing the whole thing at your chest. And there's something darkly amusing about how people act surprised when everything finally collapses. They say things like, "I didn't see it coming," or "How could this happen?" when deep down they know exactly how. They saw it, they felt it, they sensed it, but they convinced themselves that if they didn't speak it, if they didn't acknowledge it, the truth would back off out of politeness. As if truth works like that. As if reality cares about your comfort. You know why warning signs feel so uncomfortable? Because they're mirrors. They show you what you don't want to face: your weaknesses, your fears, your patterns, your denial, your unresolved chaos. And humans hate mirrors that don't flatter them. They prefer reflections that lie a little, ones that soften the edges, hide the bruises, smooth out the damage. But warning signs show you the raw version of your life, the version that needs fixing, the version silence can no longer protect. And the more you ignore them, the more you train life to raise its voice. You teach fate that you only respond to pain. You teach destiny that you only move when the ground collapses under your feet. So the signs grow sharper, the lessons grow harder, the consequences grow heavier. Because that's what ignoring truth creates: escalation. You ever wonder why the same problems keep returning? Why certain people keep hurting you the same way? Why the same cycles replay like a broken record? It's because you didn't listen the first time, or the second, or the 10th. And life, persistent as ever, keeps throwing the sign at you until you finally stop pretending nothing's wrong. Warning signs don't disappear. They transform. They shift from gentle nudges to violent reminders. They shift from whispers to alarms. And by the time they become alarms, it's no longer about preventing damage, it's about surviving it. The truth is simple. Every time you ignore a warning, you sign up for a harder version of the same lesson. And life always delivers the lesson, whether you're ready or not. You ever notice how problems don't really vanish when you ignore them? No. They just sit there, quiet, patient, sharpening their claws in the dark, while you convince yourself everything is fine. That's the beautiful little illusion. People love the idea that avoiding something somehow weakens it. But what you ignore now doesn't soften. It doesn't crumble. It doesn't fade. It evolves. It grows. It studies you. And then, when the timing feels perfect, it comes back as a storm big enough to snap your spine in half. That's the punchline no one wants to hear. The things you run from don't die. They wait. What you ignore becomes the architect of your downfall. It's like planting a seed and pretending you didn't. You can close your eyes, turn away, walk off, but the thing still grows. Roots still dig deeper. Branches still rise higher. And one day you look back and realize the tiny seed you refused to deal with is now a tree blocking your entire path. That's how life works. Small problems don't stay small. Small warnings don't stay soft. Small decisions don't stay harmless. Everything ignored expands, especially the things that scare you. You ever watch someone avoid the truth? They smile a little too tightly. Their voice shakes just a bit. They insist everything's fine, even though you can see the cracks forming in their world like spider webs. They're not fooling anyone except themselves. And that's the tragedy. The biggest lies are the ones people tell themselves to avoid confrontation. I can fix it later. It won't get worse. It'll sort itself out. These aren't thoughts. They're lullabies. Little songs people sing to put their fear back to sleep. But fear doesn't sleep. It waits. It watches. It grows teeth. And when the storm finally hits, oh, that's when reality laughs. Because storms don't come out of nowhere. They come from every warning ignored, every sign dismissed, every instinct silenced. They come from that moment you felt something was wrong but told yourself you were overreacting. They come from the time you let someone cross a boundary and convinced yourself it wasn't a big deal. They come from the dream you abandoned and acted like it wouldn't haunt you. Storms are built from silence, your silence. You ever feel that tightening in your chest, that tension in your jaw, that little knot in your stomach when you avoid something you know you shouldn't? That's your mind screaming through your body. That's your intuition trying to shake you awake. But instead of listening, you press it down. You numb it. You distract yourself. You pretend you don't feel the shift in the air. But the body keeps score. Every ignored truth stores itself somewhere inside you, until one day the weight becomes too heavy to pretend away. And that's when the storm hits. Not gently, not politely, but with the full force of everything you refuse to face. It hits you in your relationships, in your peace, in your confidence, in your purpose. It hits you where you're weakest because that's where avoidance has carved the deepest cracks. And suddenly, you're overwhelmed, broken, drowned in problems that should have been dealt with long before they reached this size. But that's how storms work. They arrive when you've exhausted all your chances to prevent them. What you ignore becomes the storm that breaks you later. It doesn't matter whether it's a habit, a fear, a person, a truth, a dream, a mistake, a responsibility. If you turn your back on it, it doesn't disappear. It gathers power. It builds momentum. It becomes something your future self will have to fight 10 times harder. And the worst part? The storm always comes at the moment you least expect it. Not when you're strong. Not when you're ready. It comes when you're tired, when you're distracted, when you're vulnerable. Because life doesn't wait for your convenience. It waits for your weakness. That's why ignoring something is never neutral. It's never harmless. It's an invitation, a welcome mat for chaos. A silent agreement that you'll deal with a bigger, harsher, louder version of the same problem later. And later always comes, in the form of consequences, in the form of breakdowns, in the form of storms that don't ask permission to destroy the things you care about. What you ignore now becomes the storm that breaks you later.